All right, Kevin, back with you for another episode of the $1 Million Relationships Podcast. And today I am here with David Sanborn. David, welcome. So awesome to have you, man.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. It's good to be here.
Yeah, this is going to be good. And I want to start by giving a quick shout out to the folks over at the Podcast Guest platform, podcastguest.com. That's how you and I met. And I'll tell you, they are doing an amazing work over there. And for a guy like me, we are, man, this is amazing. We're over 2 years into hosting this podcast. And this has been hands down the most rewarding thing I've done in my 28 years as an entrepreneur is hosting this podcast. It has exponentially impacted everything I do. We have made such a huge impact on other people's lives through this podcast. And I'm really thankful for those guys. And you and I, we already had a conversation before, and now here we are circling back around. And because of how we met, man, David, we hit it off right from, I mean, like our first conversation, we were talking like we'd known each other for years, man.
That's the best way it can go, right?
That's right.
A good conversation with good people, and you can't ask for much more.
That's right. That's right. So why don't we do this? What we'll do is we'll start. I'm going to turn it over to you so that we can set a little bit of context here and stuff. And I want you to be able to kind of, let the listeners know, what you do, who you serve, what inspires you most about the work that you guys get to do. And also, share a little bit of the backstory of how you got into doing what you do today and stuff.
Yeah, Kevin, thanks. I won't go too far back, but I will say my journey really begins coming out of college. I was I'm an engineer by education, but not by trade, really. I took a job in sales, which was a very interesting opportunity. I was in high performance fiber, so I worked for one of the major manufacturers of what's effectively a raw material, but it goes into things like armor systems, high performance tires, really interesting, like life critical applications. So very, very interesting opportunity, but I knew that the big corporate wasn't really for me. And so in 2012, I decided to launch a business, to start really to create a product. And that is just me from, if I kind of took it back all the way to being a kid. I was always the kid who we called it the shed, which sounds so basic. It was basically a workshop, right? And I could build and create even as probably 6, 7, 8, when my dad was like, okay, you can have most of the tools in there, and start to make things. And that's what I found out about myself, is really where I enjoy, is bringing together a few passions. As I got older, I realized that you can't just make something. You have to understand from a product point of view why somebody would want it. What really motivates people to buy, understanding psychology, understanding marketing, understanding getting a product into the world. But that making is that kind of initial idea for most people, especially the more inventors, or we'll say early startup businesses, I will bring this all back together. But launched that first business kind of out of the garage, sold thousands of units. Eventually, my wife was like, you can't do this in the garage basement of our entire house anymore. We had like UPS trucks picking up and tractor trailers dropping off to a townhouse. It wasn't a great setup overall, but I learned a lot about early business. I learned about e-commerce. It was a consumer product. It was actually an accessory to other products, to an electronic. You remember back in early when Bluetooth speakers came out. But I learned a lot about business because it was a really quick success, and then it basically plateaued when the market changed and the speakers that we were creating, we created cases for them. Those changed. And so the business kind of plateaued. And what I had taking what I learned constantly, that sort of entrepreneurial path of learning and growing, I pivoted into the pet industry, launched a product line, very straightforward food topper for dogs and cats. But I was able to sell that business in 2020. So a really interesting pathway from like create something in your garage, learn how to sell it, and then eventually sell a brand. And so that overall experience, again, I guess about 8 years, but a tremendous growth opportunity and learning opportunity, and figuring out what I really like to do and what I'm really good at it as well. And that kind of leads me more to today, where I've managed now from an entrepreneurial point of view, creating products, from zero, from ideation, getting them through manufacturing, setting up supply chains, all of that. But what I realized, what I really am good at is that early initial concept and development phase, right, where it's a rapid iteration. You're trying to, create something that people want, but really, for me, it's like really makes an impact. Right, you can sell almost anything to anybody, but to make a product that actually really helps them is a bit different, I will say. And so today, about a year ago, I started with two partners. We are a manufacturer. We have manufacturing facilities in China, actually. So we develop internally, and then also we bring in products that companies already make, and we effectively will re-engineer or redevelop or help them relaunch products that they already have. But really improving upon what companies already sell, or initial startups are trying to develop. So we have a full, we'll say, product development, engineering to manufacturing operation, which is a bit unique in the space because usually you have manufacturers in China and Asia, and then you have development companies maybe in the US. There's a big disconnect there. So there's a really big opportunity to kind of bridge that gap, whether it's a language barrier, a monetary, like a financial barrier, right, between the two. And quite frankly, there's never been an easier time in history for a person or a company to launch a product, to get it to customers, right? Whether you put it on Amazon to sell directly, whether you put it on, Facebook ads and put it on your website to sell directly. There's this huge opportunity for disruption where, 50 years ago, you had to be a legacy factory that had thousands of employees to deliver a product to a consumer. That's not the case anymore, right? There's constant opportunity for someone new to come in and disrupt and create really a great product.
So give me an example. What are some of the products, just a couple that you guys have helped bring to market and stuff?
Yeah. I mean, so we're what we would term an OEM manufacturer. So we don't really develop any of our own ideas and then sell them to multiple brands. If you go on Amazon right now, you might find, the same looking coffee maker from 4 different companies. And that's because there's one factory that makes that coffee maker, tweaks it a little bit maybe, but sells it to 4 different companies. That's not what we do. So from an OEM point of view, we work with a brand to develop their own product. They own the IP, they own the designs, they own the tooling usually. And so we do, each product is unique to each company, to our customers. A few examples. I mean, we're from an OEM perspective, this is where we're also different, is that we don't really focus on one industry. So we have everything from personal care. So Clarisonic was a face brush. It scrubs your face, right? It's I don't use one. I don't really understand the application other than I guess it scrubs your face better, and it does it more quickly than trying to rub your face. That's a pretty big opportunity or product from a large company. We also make everything down to caps. So complex injection molding. So plastics paired with metals and magnets. So we make caps for cups, tumbler cups. Some of the customers, I'm not sure exactly which customers say that, yeah, we want to say that you make our product. But if you can think of a Yeti cup where we manufacture, not for Yeti, but a very similar company, very complex cap systems, right? So the magnets, like there's little sliders to help close the cup so the beverages doesn't spill.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. We also have a home appliance. So our factories have made a couple of the like big as seen on TV. So there's a specific fan system that uses a water cooling. We've made millions of units for a product like that. It's as seen on TV, so millions of people would know what it is. It's actually in retail stores as well. Yeah, so we've got a very wide variety. We don't focus. Usually, you'll find a factory that maybe makes all appliances. We have a pretty broad base of product types, and we typically call it consumer electronics because it's anything that's plastic, metal, and electronics, and we effectively do the assembly operation is the key component there for combining anything that's electronic, because we can source PCBs, we can source really PCBs being circuit boards, like the internal electronics, and then assemble internally and manage quality and logistics and supply chain.
Wow. So. Very cool. Okay. So now that we've got a little bit of context set and people have a little bit of an idea of who you are, David, and what really inspires you to do what you do and what you guys do and who you serve, I'm going to shift gears just a little bit. I'm going to reiterate the question for the benefit of our listeners. So, have you ever been introduced to a person or persons that completely changed the course of your life or your business, so much so that much of what you have today would not be possible if not for this person or persons? And David, I'm just like really excited to hear your story, your experience around this topic of relationships.
Yeah. So let's see. How do I start this story? A guy walks into a bar.
Good one, David.
But seriously, that's actually the beginning of this story. Yeah, I mean, definitely. I have one person in mind that has had a big impact, and it might seem insignificant in a way, I would say, but you never know who you're going to meet, where you're going to meet him, and what the impact might be at the moment that you meet them, right? Some people think, oh, I've met a billionaire and that means I'm going to be friends with it, and I'm going to make it, that's, right? You just don't know sometimes. And that's specifically I running the second brand, so a pet brand, or a pet brand, um, small business still, growing sales online, primarily through Amazon, through our website, through some other platforms like Target.com,
Okay.
but hadn't really made the leap to retail. So a big component, yes, you can grow $100 million brand only on the internet. It's amazing what you could do today. But the reality is, especially post-COVID, is that a lot of those brands realize that being an omni-channel brand, being in retail, being online, right? Knowing your customer, right? Amazon, when you sell on Amazon, you don't know who your customer is. Amazon owns all that data. And so there's a lot to learn. And quite frankly, you don't learn it unless you really meet the people that have done this before. And so you can hire people, right? That's one way to do it. But in my case, it wasn't that. So yeah, in 2019, I guess I would say, is I signed up for an event. It was an e-commerce, it was kind of an e-commerce focused dinner. So only about 20 people invited. It was local to me. And so I walk in the restaurant and, I walk up to the bar, even though I don't drink, actually, I walk up to the bar to just get like a soda water and meet a gentleman. And I won't say his name yet. And we just start talking, and we kind of hit it off, just like you and I. Just, oh, what do you do? Oh, that's interesting. Okay, what do you do? Right? Oh, we're here for the same event, so we get that, right? So it's not that small of it's not that random of a meeting, because he was there for similar, like for the same industry, right? For the same dinner. But the fact that we just met at the bar, at the restaurant before the dinner. But yeah, so kind of kicked it off. We spent a lot of that dinner talking to each other. The dinner was sort of like a gathering where it was dinner, but then there was also like an open bar where you could kind of network and just talk to each other and kind of mix and mingle. I mean, we just ended up kind of hitting it off. So we just spent most of the time talking to each other. But fast forward, 2 to 3 months after that, stayed in touch. And it happened that he was in the brand that he was working with was more on the retail side. So, he said, hey, I know somebody that works, or a rep, I would say, that sell to Target, right? So you should talk to Targets. You can get probably access to it to Target stores. Huge opportunity, right? For a pretty small brand that you haven't done it before, so you don't know how you would get there, right? You might think, oh, look, Target, we should get in there, but how in the world do you do that? So that connection, and then what happened is he was the chief revenue officer of a company that was kind of a holding company. They had multiple brands, and after 3 or 4 months, and kind of again discussing the opportunity, he said, "Why don't we just buy you?" And it's like that opportunity to be able to take a product, an idea, right? Bring it to fruition, create a company, build a brand, get close to, at least at that point, I wasn't in Target stores. The product wasn't in Target stores. But then to say, wait, somebody wants to buy this from me.
Yeah.
And I know, I mean, it could have technically been bigger in terms of like gross revenue before selling it. But I know a lot of people that have brands that are bigger, that have e-commerce businesses that are bigger, but they still don't understand that kind of like next step. And if anything, they're stuck in the daily of it. So for me, it was the same. Like it's a very challenging business to be in. So when you have the opportunity to sell something, it kind of changes your mindset. It makes you think about how you built the business, where you came from, what you're doing, how do you do it next, right? So what am I going to do next from here? I would say I'm young enough that I look at it as I could probably start 5 more brands in my lifetime that could become huge, right? And go through that entire cycle again. And so, yeah, so that meeting, the gentleman's name is Matt Harriet. He and I are both no longer with the company that acquired the brand, but we still stay in touch. I actually saw him a few days ago, and yeah, you know, that relationship is very strong, and that knowledge sharing back and forth is something. It's very complementary to my background and sort of the e-commerce. His background being in retail and sales for so long and management that like it's just for me it's a great learning experience and a huge opportunity, and it's really helps me think about going forward as I work with clients in developing their own products and talking about, even though it's not really my job, but I can add value by saying, hey, think differently about your business, right? This is a product. We do work with a lot of companies that sell in retail, but a lot that also sell online. So anytime that I can add value, it's to me, that's what I want to do, right? Yeah, it's great to manufacture products for people, but the reality is I really like to help people grow their businesses.
Absolutely.
Right? Think about their products, see where they're going, help them with strategy if I can, or if they want me to. So
yeah, you bet. So how long ago was it that this event where this networking thing where you and Matt met? How long ago was that? When was that?
It was in 2019.
Okay.
And you know, I say that, but it might have been 2018. It was the reason why I think it is, I'm pretty sure it was wintertime. So it wouldn't have been wintertime 2019, I don't believe, because we stayed in touch for a while before it happened. So it actually was probably 2018 winter or maybe spring, like winter of 2019, early, like January, February. So somewhere around there.
Okay. And so it's been like, 5, 6 years ago and stuff. And so if you look at, what's happened in your life and what's folded in your life and your business, and and you look back at this relationship that started with you and Matt 5, 6 years ago, and you look at some stuff that's happened in your business now that hands down would have never happened if not for the relationship that you have with Matt and stuff. What is an example of that?
Wow. Yeah, that's a lot of possibilities that are hypothetical. What's so interesting is that, yeah, Matt and I met, and it's interesting for the industry that I was in, COVID happening, that it seems like it was a long time ago, or I don't know how to describe it, right? But COVID for e-commerce was just this, right? I can't even just, right? It came out of nowhere, right? For good reasons and for good things happen and bad things happen. Like e-commerce exploded. So most brands that were small became big in 6 months. It's amazing what happened for a lot of companies. And so Matt meeting and then having the opportunity to get into retail and getting close to that based on his knowledge and relationships, right? And then selling the brand, we actually closed the paperwork February 9th of 2020. So February 9th of 2020.
Wow. Right before COVID.
I mean, yeah. So I went to there's a pet industry, Global Pet Expo is a show, and it was February 28th, I believe. So close the deal. Okay, let's go down to the show. A lot of people from China weren't there, right? It's like, there's this thing going on, right? So COVID had already started to impact travel, but wasn't in mainstream news, right? I think it was March 12th, right? Was the day, or March 11th was, hey, by the way, everybody go home. So, it's very interesting, the timing. If that deal wasn't closed, if we hadn't ever met, first off, within a year, we were in Target stores. So the product's sitting on Target shelves, which is another tremendous learning opportunity, right? To learn that process, to see what's required, right? To help guide from more of as the founder, from the more the marketing sales side. So when I sold the business, we had a much larger support system, right? Shipping, logistics, a lot of help on supply chain, purchasing, procurement, all those things. But I was still the voice of the brand, right? Still creating product, but creating marketing messages, creating content, those things. So yeah, but I mean that alone, like, I mean, how many things did I say wouldn't have happened, would have happened, good or I mean, good and bad. COVID happened if it was just me, or if it was still me owning the brand. It's so hard to fathom what might have happened, right?
Yeah.
Whether it all would have fallen apart. You couldn't get plastic bottles at the time. It was very interesting, right? Because supply chains got so tangled or disrupted
Yes.
that
Yeah.
having a purchasing team meant that we could get plastic bottles, which meant that we could keep selling, right? And if I didn't have that and those connections, because they had quite frankly deeper pockets and better relationships with raw material suppliers. So there are brands that actually were hurt by COVID in the sense that there was a boom in sales of certain products, but other products just tanked. Products in
Yeah.
retail shelves that were only on retail shelves got hurt. The stores were closed.
Mhm.
So yeah, I mean there's so many possibilities there, but I think overall maybe that the whole thing is one big example of opportunities and positive outcome that came from it. That yeah, it's
Totally.
very yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's and it is really interesting to look, because this just came up in a conversation yesterday. This whole thing about COVID and what was I saw on Facebook that in 2020, 4 years ago, I had made a post publicly that I was, I'm writing a book in 2020. Who's with me? And that was like that at the time. That felt just totally right. And 2 months later, COVID hits, and priorities completely changed in my life when COVID hit, and that book never did get written. But yet, the following year in 2021 was when I was having a conversation with a friend of mine, Brad, down in San Diego, and this whole subject of hosting a podcast came up. And he had been a podcast host for a number of, I think he's had his podcast for like 10 years, and was telling me, Kev, you should really look at doing this. And of course, at the time, that was the furthest, I mean, nothing could have been further from my radar. Wasn't even on my radar. And yet, as I sat there with him and he explained why he felt I should do it and why I would enjoy it, I was like, man, you got my attention. This sounds awesome. And here it is now, over 2 years into this. And this has been the most amazing experience. And so much has come from this over the last couple of years. And like you and I talking, for example, if I wasn't hosting this podcast, we probably would have never met, because like we wouldn't have had reason to meet, and
Yep.
and yet, I mean, and so it's been an absolute game changer. And a lot of people will say, I mean, things definitely happened when COVID hit, for sure. There was pros and cons, and businesses. Some businesses were completely decimated. Other businesses were able to, a pivot became a big term in 2020. Lots of businesses were pivoting, because
Yep.
what they'd been doing wasn't working anymore, So and look at this platform that we're on right now on Zoom, recording this interview. Zoom wasn't a big. I mean, people were using it, but my gosh, when COVID hit, Zoom, man, that company took off like a bat out of heck, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah. I mean, to just think about that, the implications of work from home, of expanding a team virtually. It's funny because I was actually basically running a virtual team. I was running a virtual team in 2019, or really going back to 2017. So it wasn't exactly completely strange for me, but that was also, I would say that in a way it gave me an advantage, right? To have already been working virtually, but then have better tools. But then also understand the implications of that from creativity point of view, from hiring point of view, from access to talent to help grow a business. It's amazing that I still have a lot of friends that have warehouses and in these like physical footprints. It's a lot of overhead.
Mhm.
And today, because of the growth in e-commerce and then the support systems around that, Amazon built like, I don't know, 10 million square feet. The number is insane of the amount of space that Amazon built over like 2022, 2023, maybe it was 2021, 2022. They had already started to build, but it's not just their system, their network, right? Any support system that helps you get packages to your front door, right? Grocery delivery. I mean, think about that. Grocery delivery was extremely small in 2019.
Yeah,
And now, I mean, I remember actually Whole Foods would do free delivery for like 2 years. They did free delivery, which that was really interesting and nice. But that's changed now. But still, like the fact that you can just go on your phone, order, none of those things would have happened or it happened as
yeah,
quickly
yeah,
without COVID directly.
yeah,
So yeah,
yeah.
I mean, it's amazing the ripple effect, right? The butterfly effect. Not that the COVID was a small, it was a small anything, right? But things that happened to people might have been very insignificant, seemingly, but a huge impact down the road. So
Absolutely. Well, you know, I really want to thank you for taking the time to share and to have this conversation. And for anybody that's listening, that's going, man, Kevin, I really like David. I love the way he shows up. And how can they find out if they were so inclined? How can they find out more about the work you guys are doing? I mean, any resources, any websites? How can they find out more, David?
yeah. So yeah, the company that we do product development through, we actually have effectively we're splitting our businesses into two. We have our Gizmo Global, which is sort of a global parent company for product development manufacturing. So gizmoglobal.co. But
Okay.
then also our legacy product design business. We still have that as a separate entity. So that's gizmospring.com. You can go in there and see a lot of the great products that we've developed. But really, back to that point of manufacturing opportunities. I mean, we talk with brands every day. I talk with everything from startups to large companies about innovation, about thinking about the product, about answering questions. Talk about supply chain from COVID. Like how do you reduce the cost of your products? Cost of everything have gone up so tremendously. So then you look back at a product that might have existed in 2020, and now it's like no one wants to spend money on it anymore. And
Mhm.
so yeah, so we do a lot of that as a service, and truly it's almost no upfront cost. Basically, we invest a lot upfront with our clients, in the hopes really that we have the opportunity to manufacture products for them. So yeah, it's those are two places you can find me. You can also find me on LinkedIn, David Sanborn. I think my LinkedIn /in David A Sanborn,
Okay.
Sanborn. So
Okay.
yeah.
Very good. Well, David, once again, thanks so much for taking the time to have this conversation. Any last thing you feel led to share before we call it a wrap?
No, Kevin. I mean, it's great. It's been great to talk to you. And the opportunity to meet everything that we just addressed. I love the idea of what you're doing in this ecosystem of from the podcast to the people, right, and making connections. Um, yeah, like it's you realize how important a network is, right? As you
Yeah.
build a business, as you grow. When you're younger, you might think, I don't need friends or whatever it is, right? I can do this all myself, but that's not true, right? I mean, you realize the number of things you don't know, and that's where this type of interaction is so valuable, because I'm always constantly trying to learn as well. And I just appreciate, thank you for the time, and appreciate what
Yeah,
you're doing. So
absolutely.
it's
Well,
yeah.
thank you as well. And I am really excited to get this interview out there, share it with a lot of other entrepreneurs, founders, and CEOs, because I know they're going to get a ton of value from it as well. And so thanks so much, David, and really appreciate it.